On this particular tour, there's projected to be about 80 to 85 brass era cars. A brass era car is defined as a car built in 1915 or earlier. So every car on this trip will be well over 100 years old. And we'll be touring for about 4 days, and we'll be doing back roads and sometimes what they call country trails here, which are dirt roads.
The origins of the Horseless Carriage Club date pretty far back. It's dedicated to the preservation and education about cars referred to as the brass era or pre-1916. People often ask us, you know, why this particular era of car? You know, why brass era? Why horseless carriage? There's just something about a brass car when you get involved with it. They all have their own personality. A lot of the people in our club, you know, we come to the proposition that these cars were built to be driven and built to be shared.
It's similar to a bunch of buddies getting together for a football game, or you know, when your kids were in soccer and your friends were on the sideline of the soccer field, and these are our friends, and we like to go around.
Well, we're in Pennsylvania now, and when driving this car, all these cars, we get a lot of attention. This is Amish country, and the Amish kids, a lot of them are homeschooled and they're outside a lot, and when they watch us go by, they all go like this. I mean, honk your horn. They want to hear the horns honk. And a lot of these cars have more than just a bulb horn. They have hookah horns, they have whistles that come off the exhaust, all kinds of crazy things that make a lot of fun sounds that the kids love.
On these tours, we generally go between 70 and sometimes a little over 100 miles. Well, we call it the brass era because it was before chrome plating and before nickel plating. They just had the exposed brass. After about 1912, they began to nickel plate, and then chrome plating came in the mid-20s. To me, the brass looks like gold when it's shining.
Your arm gets tired waving back at everybody because they're all wanting to wave and express their appreciation for you're bringing the cars out and letting them see it. It's rolling history, and that's the high point for me of driving, is sharing history with all the various people that we bump into.
Start spreading. start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York, start spreading the news.
If you're having fun and everything is good, let me know. If there's any problems, call Clay. Thanks again.
Now on these tours, you just see a lot of things traveling these back roads that you would not normally stop at. Even if you have a tour around your own house, you see different things, different collections, just a lot of different tour stops and beautiful back roads and nice scenery. It's just a pleasure to travel the country slowly and see a lot of this stuff.
I would have to believe that just about everybody who's here, but the people on this tour, are on this tour every year, which tells you how much they like this tour. Mm-hmm. But I think that even somebody who's been here once probably has a good enough time where they really, really appreciate it. They may not come back the next year for this particular tour, but it's going to be on their list. I will be back here sometime.
The passion started in my family. My grandfather, for my father's side, was a real car enthusiast. He was the village doctor, a very small, tiny man, but he always bought the biggest American cars he could buy. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and True. That's the same if you compare that to the worth of a car. For somebody, this car could be priceless.
Touring, it's kind of in our blood. A lot of us have been come up through the family. My grandfather was in the club. My dad was in the club. I've been around these cars since I've been about 8, 9 years old.
I like to keep the car as authentic as possible. Absolutely the way it came out of the factory. So this car, for example, has the side lights, like most of these cars, are kerosene. The headlamps are acetylene gas. And that acetylene gas is made from a unit on the other side of the car over there, a big brass unit called a carbide generator. And what it does is it takes water, drips it on calcium carbide, and that makes acetylene gas. That runs up tubes and goes to these headlights, and you get a nice bright white flame.
It is a 1914 Buick. I bought it from a picture. I have it. It's a fantastic touring car for tours like this. We love to be here. It's beautiful country, very, very nice people, all of them, and I like the atmosphere of the tour. And
my story with this Model T is that I wanted a Model T, and I saw one in the paper, and I talked my big brother into driving about 50 miles with me to go look at it. And when I looked at it, I said, I can make that car nice with a little work.
Working on. What do we have here?
This is my big friend Clay, as you know. He found this car for me, and he did the negotiations with the previous owner, and it's most of the time it's stored at Clay's house. So if we come over either for this tour or for Hershey or any other tours, then we drive up to Clay's, pick it up.
And life is good.
Yeah, and life is good, and we're having fun.
Boy, are we.
Yeah.
Love you, big guy.
My name is Shaq Lesher.
And my name is Augie Lesher, and this is our parents' 1913 Buick. We've been riding in them basically all our life, and it's a lot of fun.
We get a lot of questions about our cars when we're out driving them. Oh, do these run on regular gasoline? And we say, yes, they do.
Another fun memory that I've had in this car is when, a few years ago, when we would take all the antique cars to my school, and I'd always like telling all my friends about hey, this is our car, and it's over 100 years old, and they all loved riding in these, so that was a fun moment for me.
They were made to go, just not as comfortable as a modern car because, they did make side curtains for them. Those things were extra though. The windshield was extra. In the 40s, my uncle had a couple of antique cars, and he wanted my dad to have a car. And we went to this place along the Connecticut shoreline, saw these cars in a junkyard. We were not what you call well off, and I thought, wow, that was a lot of money for a junky old car. And as it turned out, my father never did get the car. About 15 years ago, I was going to a flea market, and this car was there. I ended up buying this Pope Harford. One of the old timers for Connecticut cars told me about this car, and he says, "It's a wonderful car, Jerry." He says, "It came from Connecticut." He says, "It belonged to the milkman." So I went to my secretary and I said, "Can you find people on the computer?" And she says, "Oh yeah." So she went and she got busy. She came back with about 3 or 4 pages of names. And the third call I called, I said, "Hi, are you the milkman?" And he said, "Who told you that?" And I said, "Louis Biondi in Connecticut." And I said, "Where was this car?" He says, "It was in a junkyard in Connecticut." This is the very car that my father tried to buy in 1949, 47. And unfortunately, by the time I got it, my dad had passed, but he's in the back seat all the time with me.
The rarest car that I worked on that was a 1902 Knox. There's also a car from Willem. We did it last year, London to Brighton with the car. And he bring it back to my workshop, and I have modified the gearbox and the engine, and now I see electrical starting.
Most of the people, if not all of the people on this tour, which would be over 80 cars that is, have mechanical expertise. I'm educated as a mechanical engineer, and most of these people have high-level degrees in engineering. And so we can't wait for a car to break so we can get in there and fix it and figure out what's going on and fix it.
Well, the maintenance on these vehicles, since they're all over 100 years old, we seem they are going to break down and have some issues with them. And when somebody does, it's not common, but it does happen. And if somebody has a problem, they kind of pull over and they'll either go a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If it's a thumbs down, somebody will stop and see if they can help them, give them moral support, or try to figure out a way to repair any problems that they're having with it.
Antique cars have a little bit more maintenance than newer cars being those in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Even those have more maintenance than modern cars. They don't have sealed bearings, so you've got to do a lot of things you normally wouldn't, like grease the front wheel bearings. And in a Model T's planetary transmission, you've got bands in there. They wear out, they need to be replaced frequently. The low gear band needs to be tightened quite often, like weekly, if you drive it a lot.
The brass air cars only have rear wheel brakes. There's no brakes on the front wheels. You have to be careful how you drive them. On this car, it had been converted to hydraulic brakes on the rear, so we can stop pretty nicely. But still, you have to be careful every time you drive it.
After you start the car, you push the throttle down slightly and you push the timing down all the way. When you want to go forward, this brake will keep this pedal in a neutral position. When you let off the brake, you push down on this pedal, that's low gear. After you get up to speed, like about 10 miles an hour, you let off that pedal, and that's high gear. If you want to go in reverse, you push the pedal in the middle to neutral, and then you push on the reverse pedal. So you push it in, it's a clutch and oil.
As different as they are from a modern car, the modern car takes its origins from these automobiles.
There's a lot of things different. The old car, you must check more the oil and everything, and especially driving is a lot of work, kind of work. Modern car, you're starting in and everything is going automatically. You have not power steering, you have not power brakes, you have only brakes on the rear wheels.
Baby, what you all about? Baby, show me what you all about. Baby, I just wanna show you off. Yeah, come and show me what you all about. Made a promise to each other, we gon' hold it down. When you with me, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Come jump in with me, yeah, and we gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. Ride off, yeah. Come and show me what you all about. Made a promise to each other, we gon' hold it down. When you with me, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Come jump in with me, yeah, and we gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. I just wanna show you off, yeah. Come and show me what you all about. Made a promise to each other, we gon' hold it down. When you with me, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Come jump in with me, yeah, and we gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. We gon' ride off. Ride off.
So we were climbing up Walker Pass, and a little bit more rain at that point, cold, miserable. And when we were getting up pretty close to the top, here we started smelling smoke. And we looked down the firewall and it started changing colors. And at that point we smelled smoke and rubber and all sorts of essences of different odors. So we decided we better look into that. Got out, put the hood up, and there was a little bit of smoke whiffing up from around me. There's a little smoke there, and we thought we better get the fire extinguisher and put this out. But then, of course, right about then, we remembered we didn't have a fire extinguisher. So this is a very short video, and you have to be right on top of it to see that there I was putting it out with a bottle of water.
David, was that right spill water?
It may have been. It tasted a lot like it. So at any rate, we got the fire out, and we thought that probably one of the first things we ought to buy would be a fire extinguisher. So as we headed into the next little town, we stopped at a couple of convenience stores and ended up finding a fire extinguisher. We're into the mountains again, up and down hills and one thing or another, and lo and behold, we smell smoke again. So this time there's no worry though, because we had the fire extinguisher. I couldn't get off the road right away because it was a narrow mountain road. The road wasn't a good place to get off, but we eventually found a place to pull over. And by that time, we actually had a good deal of claims. So I noticed my son thrashing around, obviously going for the
fire extinguisher, and I was still driving at that point, and nothing happened, except the fire started getting a little bigger. So I wondered what he might be doing, and I find out that instead of him getting a fire extinguisher, he was getting his camera to take pictures.
Huh? 2018 Brass Horse.
Yeah.